This is Focus on Africa. I'm Lokwesa Burak. Our top story today, a president ousted, international condemnation, and now a power vacuum. We're going to be taking a long look at what's next for Mali the day after a military coup threw a country vital to regional security into disarray. Well, hello and welcome to Focus on Africa, coming to you from BBC World News. Now, we're dedicating half of our show to Mali, which just a couple of hours ago was suspended from the African Union a day after the ousting of President Ibrahim Boubacar Keita and his government. It's still not clear who exactly is in charge. Now, soldiers who toppled the government have said that they plan to set up a civilian transitional government that will organise fresh elections in what they call a reasonable time. Well, let's have a listen to the televised address from late last night in which President Keita announced that he was stepping down.
Si aujourd'hui il a plu.
If some elements of our armed forces today were happy to decide that with their intervention my presidency should end, do I really have the choice not to comply? I submit to it because I do not wish any blood to be shed to keep me in power.
Well, that was the now former President Keita speaking last night. Meanwhile, the spokesman for the Malian opposition June the 5th coalition said that the group and its supporters were looking for a democratic solution.
Everyone is trying to reject this corrupt and criminal regime. But we remain convinced there's no alternative to democracy. Our fight is democratic. We have been protesting against the president democratically since the 5th of June. People inside the country and those in the diaspora have rejected this regime. So this question of mutiny, I think, consults the people of Mali.
So let's take a look at how we got here. We're going to look over what has been months of political crisis that began to gain momentum earlier this year, sparking what experts have now called the country's worst unrest in years. On June the 5th, a loose alliance of opposition parties and civil society figures came together and they were calling for protests. Tens of thousands of people then hit the streets in the capital, Bamako, demanding President Keita step down. This so-called June the 5th movement blamed Mr. Keita and his government for what they said was worsening jihadist violence in the country, inter-community bloodshed, corruption, mismanagement of the economy and a dispute over April's legislative elections. The crisis escalated and in early June, 11 people were killed by security forces during anti-Keita rallies. Later that month, the opposition alliance and religious leaders led by a man called Imam Diko rejected a plan to break the impasse put forward by the 15-nation regional bloc ECOWAS to set up a unity government. So why does Mali matter? Well, Mali is part of the Sahel region. Now, it shares land borders with several countries, including Mauritania, Senegal, Burkina Faso and Niger. There are now fears that these latest developments in Mali could ripple right across the whole region, further destabilising a region struggling to deal with the growing threat of an Islamist insurgency. So regional and international bodies have all denounced the military takeover. The African Union has suspended Mali and said that it rejected any attempt at unconstitutional change of government, whilst the United Nations called for all parties to uphold human rights and freedoms of all Malians. Well, meanwhile, ECOWAS is the regional organisation of the West African countries and said that a delegation of West African heads of states will be visiting Mali after the body announced a blockade and suspension of financial links. Now, the man who is monitoring things for us, you saw him briefly on the screen there, is Will Ross, and he is the BBC World Service's Africa regional editor. Will, it's been a fast-moving situation really in Mali. So just bring us up to date in terms of where we are.
Well, the latest this afternoon has been a very brief press conference or statement really given by several of the military men who seem to be now in power. At least these were the people who came to talk to the media. And they announced that there had been no loss of life during the military takeover, the coup. Although there are some reports from a hospital that a few people did die, possibly from stray bullets. And they also called for people to go back to work and for things to get back to normal in the country. And they were also telling people not to vandalize or loot, because there was some looting going on late last night and overnight. We've also had, as you mentioned in your introduction, a lot of condemnation from the international community. Specifically, the latest today, the African Union doing what it normally does, and that's condemn a coup. Although it has to be said, this is a rather bizarre situation because you've got all these international bodies condemning what's gone on, but it seems to be clear that the military do intend to hand over to a civilian administration. So I'm not sure quite what the purpose of all the suspensions and condemnation is going to do if, for instance, we have, quite soon a civilian-led administration leading the country towards elections.
Will, is there any indication as to why they chose this moment to carry out this coup? There were discussions taking place.
Well, there were discussions taking place led by the former president of Nigeria, Goodluck Jonathan. That was an ECOWAS delegation, but it didn't really seem to be making any progress at all. Every recommendation they came up with was rejected by the opposition protest movement. We're talking about, coalition governments, etc. They really were insisting on the former president stepping down. So why did the military do this now? Well, there may be all kinds of things going on within the military that we're not privy to, including, anger with the way that the government possibly was handling the growing insecurity in the problem. There have also been some allegations of corruption within the military. It's interesting that the people who seem to be in charge of the country now, or at least the people who've been put forward, are from the ranks of colonels. There's one general who's possibly involved as well, who is in charge of a peacekeeping institution in Mali. But these are not, people at the very top of the military. So there is some unhappiness amongst the lower ranks, as it were. Why did they step in now? We've also got to look at what was going on with these mass protests that have gone on since June. Huge numbers of people out on the streets, really making the position of the president untenable. They just simply were refusing to stop these protests and to stop these calls for him to step down, whatever concessions he offered. So the military saying, or these members of the military are saying, they did it to prevent the country descending into more chaos. And the President Ibrahim Boubacar Keita, before he stepped down, that was his title before he stepped down. As he stepped down, he made it very clear that he was forced to. Of course, he was taken hostage, as it were, really, to a military camp at gunpoint. So he had no choice. But in his sort of farewell message, he said he was taking that action to avoid bloodshed as well.
And briefly, Will, so we're hearing from the military, we've heard from the former president. What about Malians themselves? I mean, are they in support of the military? People get very jittery, don't they? And this June the 5th movement, were they aware that this was all going on? Are they working? Are they collaborating with the military?
They seem to be happy from what they've said so far, the opposition movement. They seem to be happy with the suggestion from the military that there's going to be a swift handover, and the military saying they're not interested in staying in power. Ordinary Malians were pretty fed up with what was going on. There will be some nervousness because so many people will remember what happened back in 2012. Another coup because the military was unhappy with the way the Tuareg rebellion was being handled. And then that led to the jihadist rebellion and the north of the country being taken over. So the crucial thing is that there's not a power vacuum and more chaos. And one of the hardest things will be organising elections so that there can be stability in the country. Remember that, there is still a lot of conflict going on in Mali at the moment.
OK, Will Ross, BBC World Service's Africa Regional Editor, thank you very much for that overview and update. We're going to continue with this discussion. And Laure-Anne Teru-Benoni is the Regional Director for the Institute for Security Studies for West Africa, and she joins us now from Dakar. Thank you very much for joining us here on Focus on Africa. First off, what can we expect to happen next? Because that really is what everybody's watching.
Yeah, so there are a couple of priorities to look at. For example, how will the transition be led and what will be the roadmap and who will lead this transition? There's also obviously the issue of the ECOWAS sanctions. Will they be implemented and what will be the impact on the economy? In which direction will this push the process? So I think these are the questions that everyone has in mind in terms of the next step currently.
And I suppose that is a priority because you really don't want a power vacuum, do you?
That's correct. I think the issue of the power vacuum, as your correspondent was rightly pointing out, creates an opportunity and additional opportunities for jihadist armed groups in the region. And already there has been a declaration by JNIM, the Group for the Support of Islam and the Muslim, on their channels, a group that is affiliated to Al-Qaeda, which shows that they clearly are following the development linked to the military mutiny. And that clearly they are seeing this as an opportunity and they're calling on JNIM members to exploit chaos to advance Islam and the jihad. So this issue raises perhaps an important risk in terms of the capacity of the security apparatus to both play a role on the political scene and continue to respond to a rapidly evolving threat, which, as you know, is now going way beyond Mali, but has also moved into northern Burkina and then large swaths of the Burkina Faso country into Niger, and is now even threatening some of the northern coastal states such as Benin, Togo, and Ghana. So the impact of this situation onto the entire region is one to be looking at very closely.
Yeah, so we're hearing a lot about this sort of regional stability. We're hearing the international voices very clearly focused on this aspect. Why does it matter to them? Because when you hear Malians speaking, they're far more concerned about the economic state of their country. Why does it matter beyond African borders?
I'm not sure they see it only as something that has an impact on their economy. I think when you speak to Malian, and a lot of the surveys that have been done by various organizations over the past few years show that one of the important aspects that they were unhappy with in relation to President Keita's governance was linked to his incapacity to bring back security. And no insecurity means you cannot leave Bamako, you cannot go back to your village, but it also means lots of displaced people from your family might be coming as refugees in Bamako, in the outskirts of Bamako, or in your house. So it has a direct impact on the economy, but also on the quality of life for Malian in general. So I think.
I just want to interrupt because we're just running out of time. So on that point then, Mali can't do without international help, can it? And yet there are some quarters who don't want international presence in the country.
So I think if you analyze the discourse of the coup leader, it shows clearly that they are conscious that they need international support, because most of the speech that they pronounce is actually targeted at international actors. They specifically name the UN mission, the G5 Sahel, Barkhane, which is the French military presence in the region. And they do so because they are aware that they don't want to alienate these actors in the current context. This is also why they are pushing forward and quickly the issue of a civilian transition, because they are aware of the need for them to continue have support of international actors.
That's wonderful. Thank you very much for that analysis. That's Laure-Anne Teru-Benoni. Thank you. You're watching Focus on Africa. Stay with us because still to come, we're going to be speaking to the UN about why the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo is seeing an increase in violent attacks. Stay with us. Welcome back. Now, there's concern at the alarming increase of violent attacks on civilians by armed groups in the Eastern Democratic Republic of the Congo. UNICEF estimates that since May, more than 40,000 people, including 7,500 children under 5, and more than 1,500 pregnant women have fled villages in the territories of Uvira, Fizi and Mwenga. Well, if you stay with us, actually, we've got our guest, which is fantastic. This is Diego Zorrilla. Thank you very much, Mr. Zorrilla, the Deputy Humanitarian Coordinator for the UN in the DRC. Yes, that's great. We've got comms with you. Thank you very much. So let's kick off. What's caused this intensification of the violence then?
The intensification of the violence in eastern Congo has to be really considered situation per situation. I mean, the Congo itself is a country that is larger than Western Europe. Each one of these provinces have the size of what European countries would be. And the dynamics of conflict in each province are particular, and they relate to competition for resources, they relate to intercommunal violence, there is also conflict around land, and all of this fueled by the existence of weapons and the alliances with regional powers. So what we're now seeing occurring, for example, in Ituri or in South Kivu or in North Kivu or in Tanganyika, each one of those countries are, as I said before, the size of European countries. And there are dynamics, local dynamics, that fuel conflict. And in some cases, like, for example, in the case of Ituri, it is very dramatic. Ituri is now going through one of the periods of a crisis, most intense crisis. Ituri was in a war at the end of the 90s and beginning of 2002. But since 2003, it had been pacified, but it relapsed into conflict in 2019.
So what would help to alleviate this problem? What needs to be done?
Well, this problem, first of all, causes immense human suffering, and this is what we are today. Is we're commemorating World Humanitarian Day, and the Congo remains one of the biggest humanitarian crises in the world. I mean, it has the second number of people displaced in the world, just after Syria. It has the second largest number of people that suffer from food insecurity after Yemen. This is something that we may not realize every day, because we've been talking about the DRC, the Congo, for the last 25 years. But the acuteness, the dimensions of the humanitarian crisis and the acuteness of the humanitarian crisis are very stark. These numbers translate into shattered lives for millions of people that are forced to flee their homes, that are facing. That are leaving homes.
Yeah, sorry. Just in the time that we've got, what can be done to help? I mean, it's very clear the problems that you've described, and we can see it on the screen as well. Living conditions are absolutely horrendous. There's a lady doing her washing up with leaves from a plant. How do we help?
Well, we definitely help through providing humanitarian assistance. Humanitarian assistance is the help that people need in order to be able to meet their most basic vital needs. Then there's, of course, a need to work on the resolution of these conflicts, but this is something that pertains to the Congolese themselves. I mean, there are good efforts at at conflict resolution at local level. Some of them have yielded positive results, but as I said, there's not one crisis. There's a myriad of crisis. Then what people really want is to live in peace. I mean, they want security, and they want to be able to carry out their lives in peace.
Okay. Diego Zorrilla, run out of time. Lots to talk about, but for now, thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Now, as the COVID-19 pandemic continues to hammer the global economy, we've seen some really interesting trends emerging, turning crisis into opportunity. Under lockdown, many of us have turned to the internet for a range of social and commercial activities. And in Africa, it's led to a growth of e-commerce for weekly groceries, something traditionally done in person at brick and mortar shops. Well, the BBC's Vumani Mkezi has been window shopping for us.
The coronavirus is fundamentally changing our habits as consumers, and the need for social distancing is ensuring that gone are the days of casually going to a mall to do our everyday shopping. And that's good news for online retailers, and they are seeing exponential growth of their businesses. Talking about exponential growth, meet Donald Baloyi, the founder of Zulzi, a grocery delivery service that lets you purchase all of your essentials from the comfort of your home. According to Donald, since the beginning of South Africa's lockdown in March, orders have increased by over 500%.
We were expecting some growth in the e-commerce space to say 5 years from now it's gonna look like this. I think what coronavirus has done is it has accelerated that growth and sort of like brought it forward. What we thought was going to happen in 2030 is already happening now. What I'm seeing is obviously I think things are going to settle a little bit later, but there's definitely a lot of customers who have now been converted to start shopping online, and those customers are definitely going to go back.
On a global scale, consumers spent nearly $3.5 trillion last year online. And here in Africa, while the market is still small, the COVID-19 pandemic is causing permanent consumer behavioral change.
Over a third of consumers have said that they are shopping more online. They are ordering online. They are partaking in e-commerce. But what's really interesting is in that study, we saw that 10 to 20% of African consumers say they intend to continue to shop for food online. And that's a big change, because in the past, what we've seen is where e-commerce has been successful in Africa around things like fashion, around technology, around durables, but not around food and consumables. And to see that shoppers have said, after the pandemic, I'm going to continue buying my food online is a pretty big shift for the e-commerce.
Mwenda Makatimo lives in Nairobi and has been shopping online for a number of years now. But while she's enjoyed the experience, there are some challenges.
Some of the items don't get delivered on the same day through some applications. I also am not able to use the online shopping applications if I don't have internet. Yes, so it means that for you to use the online shopping applications, you need a smartphone and you need internet. So if you don't have internet, that can be a challenge.
Despite the challenges of internet connectivity and a preference for cash in some African markets, online shopping is clearly a growing trend on the continent, a trend that has been accelerated by a disease that will be with us for some time still. Vumani Mkize, BBC News, Johannesburg.
Okay, let's just remind you of our top story today, and really a story we're going to see develop, I think, going into the weekend, and that is the continuing crisis in Mali. Yesterday, we had news of a potential coup that was confirmed overnight, and we're now in the position where the president, former president, Ibrahim Boubacar Keita, has resigned. He resigned in the early hours of the morning. The country has been suspended from the AU after the military toppled the government. The AU also demanding the release of Mr. Keita, forced to resign, like I said, overnight. He was, in the build-up to that, arrested by members of the military. There's also been widespread condemnation from international organisations and world leaders as well. And as you can imagine, France, as a former colonial power, has also condemned what has taken place. Germany following suit, as has the EU. And as I said, suspension from the AU confirmed earlier today. The military have promised to hand over to a civilian administration as soon as they can order fresh elections at a reasonable time. That is our top story. Stay with us. Plenty more on that online. In the meantime, I'm Lukwesa Burak. If you want to get in touch, from all the team here on Focus on Africa, I'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.